Namaste students, welcome back to a sociology class. In the last class we were in the chapter 4 community. In the last class we studied what is the meaning of community, and we also studied the different types, what are the major types, that is the nomadic, tribal, rural and urban. We have finished with the nomadic community and the rural community and the characteristics of it, and also the important geographical zones where the tribes live in India. Now we will move on to the rural community. In region, when we tell rural community, we had to know what is the meaning of rural community. So the meaning of rural community is uh, where it is known as a countryside or a village in India. So here the population density is low. In rural areas, agriculture is the chief source of livelihood along with fishing, cottage industries and pottery. So when we move on to the definition which is given by the RBI, it defines the rural areas as those areas with a population which is less than 49,000. And also it is generally said that the rural areas houses up to 70% of India's population stay there. So the rural India contributes a large chunk to the India's GDP by the way of agriculture, self-employment, services, constructions. So this is about the rural community gist. But this rural community is known by the different names uh, for the rural community. So example, we are having the, we call it as a Uru, Keda, Halli. And India, as we all know children, where we are staying, our country is called as the land of villages. And agriculture is the main occupation of our people. So, in ancient literature of India, we have many explanations have been given on the administration of the rural areas where we study in history. And the opines that the human society which is there, it is evolved. That is, it has taken birth in the cradle called village. Though village, it is a very ancient entity, it is difficult to define a proper way. So, according to Bogdas, he has defined that the village community is the union of small population, simple and low expenditure life with primary relationship. Children, today the population, when we take it out, it is the universal yardstick is used to recognize the village or the rural community. So when we go, we are having the whole land where we are having 20,000 people. It differs, children, according to the population. The rural community differs from one country to another country. So when we go to Holland, the people where we are having less than 20,000, we call that as a rural community there. So in America it is 25,000, and in France and Japan it is less than 30,000 people, we call that as a rural area. But when we move on to India, we tell that the 5,000 population is called as a less than 5,000 population, we call that as a rural community. But there are some other subclasses added to this. From the last 50 years, the occupation, lifestyle, economic life, the income source, the basic infrastructures, along with the population, are also all put together. They are used to define the rural area. So when we go on to the demographic background, children, the rural community, it is defined like as area which is having less than 5,000 population, and the population, the density is less than 400 per square kilometer, and 70% of the people where they depend upon the agriculture as their occupation, we call that as a rural community. Some sociologists define the rural community based on the population is not correct. So it is important to consider that that one-to-one relationship while defining the rural community. Now let us move on to the structure. Let us move on to the structure of the rural community. When we move on to the structure, the village is different from urban community when we in the two aspects. One is the social aspect and another is the cultural aspects. Village can be defined as the area where it consists of the families where they mainly depend upon the agriculture and it is their main occupation for their livelihood. So these families' children, apart from agriculture, many families also depend upon the rearing of animals like ox, cow, sheep, goat, hen, and other domestic animals. So when we put all together this, the physical characteristics of the village is agriculture, and agriculture is based on occupations. So we are all here, we are having the issues like, what are the issues like? We are having the issues like where we can define a rural community like the population, density of population, occupation, geographical feature, water, soil, and what are the basic infrastructure they are getting, and what are the type of season they are influencing. All these comes under the rural community. Now we will move on to the next, that is the types of villages. When we tell, we are having it is mainly classified into three types, children. So, three types of villages. We are having the centralized villages, the villages with independent households and farms, scattered group villages, villages of line house, circle shaped villages, square shaped villages, and also we are having the converged road. You cannot see here, it is there, it is covered with the picture here. So the last one is we are having the converged road villages or the market villages. Now let us study this one by one. When we move on to the centralized villages, centralized villages, we see this. The main characteristics of these villages is these are located in the farmland, and also the house remain close to each other, and we also see the each other, and the size of the villages increases as per the people in the agriculture increases, so that we call it as a centralized villages. Now we are having the villages with independent households and farms. So this type of villages are found in, where do we find? We find this in the coastal areas, children, and in the irrigated areas of Raichur districts of Karnataka. Here, what happens? A farmer lives away from the farmer families, and the house is surrounded by the cattle shed, agricultural equipments, fodder for cattle. So here we can see. Next, we are having the scattered group villages. So this type of villages is located in the hilly region. You can see here in the hilly region, where we can find that uplands of the districts, and this type of group of families live away from the other groups of families. A group of families may be located on a hill and any other may below the hill. So such types of villages, we call it as the scattered group of villages. Then we are having the villages of line houses, you can see here. So here what happens, the families are located on both the sides of the road. You can see on both the sides of the road, and here one house is attached to the other. A wall divides one house from another house. So how does it look? It looks like an extension of the same building. Then we are having the circle shaped villages, children. So this is a round shaped villages. Here the houses would be present around a temple. In the middle there will be a temple, a masjid, or a church, or a tank, and round shaped settlement is taken place. You can see in this picture. Then we are having the square shaped villages. These villages are the same as line villages. Here the houses are placed in parallel and horizontal to each other. Then we are having the market villages. Here what happens, the families which are based on non-agricultural production occupations stay in this market villages. Houses are located in those areas where we are having two or more roads which converge, which meet at a point. Shops and hotels are attached to the houses. These villages are named as Junction, Kaimara, Kodu, and classification is an the whatever we tell, the classification is an incomplete one. A few villages cannot be grouped under the classifications of all these what we studied now. So the changes that are taking in the villages are due to the science and technology that have changed the structure of the villages now, children. Now we will move on to the next topic, that is the characteristics of the rural community. So they are small in size, agriculture and agriculture related economy. We are having a community life, they are having the democratical ideals and lack of civic infrastructure. So now let us study about all these in detail, children. When we tell, even though the Indian villages have undergone changes, there are some unique features which are still existing even to this day, children. Max Weber, he says that majority of the Indians, they live in the villages. When the 2011 census was held, we see that 68% of the Indian population children, they live in the villages. We can see that it influences on the social life of the people, and also the size of the village is small and the population density of the villages is also small. So that is why it is small in size. Next we are having agriculture and agricultural related economy. The rural economy children, the rural in rural economy children, the rural life is very simple, children. Here the main occupation is, the main activities which is related here in the this one is mainly is agriculture and agriculture related activities, farming, where many people depend on the nature. 59% men and 75% women, they are dependent on agriculture for their livelihood. So the number of agriculture workers have been increased from the by year. For example, we see that in 1991 there were 74.6 million people on the agriculture as agriculture workers on the agricultural land. In 2001, it was 106.8 million people dependent on agriculture. In 2011, we see that it is 144 million people. So this shows that the number of agricultural workers are increasing in the are dependent upon the agriculture. So the lack of secured income from agriculture and agricultural related activities, this is one of the major challenge for the rural life. Next we are having the community life, children. Here the rural people, they are very strong. They are strong in faith, children. They believe in nature. They have a strong faith on nature. They worship the rain. If you have been visited to your villages, you see that together they celebrate the festivals and also the rituals of the local deities. And the people here in the villages, they live in harmony. They are evolved on the basis of one for all and all for one. And here competition, cheating, superficialness, exploitation are very less when we compare to the urban areas. Next we will move on to the democratic ideals. Here in Indian villages, they are being built on the basis of democracy these days, children. In many villages, all the members of the village participate in few activities. The participation of the villagers in the functioning of the Gram Panchayat is another good example. When we move upon to the democratical ideals, we see this, we study about the Panchayat Raj institutions in your development lesson in your 10th class. You'll be studying how it helps. Next, we are having the lack of civic infrastructure. The lack of basic infrastructure is not there. That is, the basic facilities like health, education, civic protection, judiciary are more prevalent in the rural communities. Now we will move on to the next topic, that is the urban community. As we see, the urban community, it is not a very new concept, children. It is an old one. When the human history started, from that time we are having all these rural community, urban community. The thing it is that the changes have been taken place in the structure, the function of production from time to time. So the urban centers, they have become big on large proportions since from the time of when we studied above from the Harappan and Mohenjo-daro civilization. So the urban places where we tell, it is a very unique feature in the human history. It plays a very important place, not only in the human civilization but also the lifestyle of the human beings. Due to the industrial revolution, the changes have been taken in the urban communities. The revolutions in the technology always influence on the industrial revolution, children. The process of industrialization plays a very important role in the urbanization. During this industrialization, people from rural communities, they came to the urban communities in large number in search of job. So now we see that during those days, some towns, they later became a huge cities. The excess production in agriculture, this also has been led to the growth of the non-agricultural cities. This is also one of the reason for the growth of the urban community. The excess production led to the expansion of constructional activities like buildings, and also it has led to the establishment of huge industries and commerce and trade. This process clearly marked the difference between the rural community and the urban communities, children. Urban places are called the modern settlements of the human beings. Urban life is not is considered as the most developed human living, and it is equally complex. When we look from the administrative perspective, the government accords a particular place to the city, to the status of the city, and it has become an urban center. A place that has a population that is more than 5,000, and the density of the population, when we tell the density of the population, density of 1,000 people per square kilometer, and where more than 75% of the population are engaged in non-agricultural production, then we call that as an urban center or an urban community. From a demographic view, children, a place where that has more population and population density, then we call that as an urban center. The process of urbanization change happens from time to time, and also it changes from time to time. The number of urban residents is increasing due to various reasons. It is a process wherein the society becomes increasingly urban in its structure. The process of urbanization hastened with the increase in industrialization. Hence, the process of urbanization is invisible in almost all the countries of the world. Now let us move on to the characteristics of the community, urban community. It is large in size, cultural diversity, non-agricultural jobs, non-importance of primary relationships, and formal social control. Now let us study in detail about one by one the characteristics, children. when we tell large in size when compared to the rural area, rural community, we find that the urban community is large in size and also the population is more. According to the 2011 census, there are 4,381 people who are staying in per 1 square kilometer in Bengaluru. This shows that the population is large in urban community. Next, we are having cultural diversity. We can see that children here in the urban areas, we all of us are living in the urban areas, right? There are different regions, and we belong to different places. We speak different languages, and their life operates at the different cultural, religious and social levels. So this shows that we are having cultural diversity, that is, which is one of the most important characteristic of the urban community. Next, we are having the non-agricultural jobs. More number of people here, they depend upon the non-agricultural job. They might be engaged in the jobs in the industrial works, commerce, trade, professions and administrative services. Next, we are having the non-importance of primary relationships. Formal relationships are more in urban communities. So no one cares for the other more. So they restrict their attention to themselves and to their families. So we are restricted only to our own. We do not depend or we do not see about the others. So this is also there. Then we are having the formal social control. So the urban centers that have various institutions, we are having the police system, judiciary, other civic services which is needed there, where we get the social security, and we also see that where our basic civic rights protections are given to the citizen. So with this, children, we finish up with the chapter community. And after seeing the video, please read the textbook and make the points, write down the points while you are reading in your social science long notebook. Thank you, children.